To understand coral reefs, we first need to learn some basic information. Coral reefs are large underwater structures composed of the skeletons of colonial marine invertebrates called coral. Because they are so large, they are very diverse and they are also intricate. They are a collection of species that interact with each other and the physical environment. Scientists often refer to them as the rainforest of the sea because it is estimated that 25% of all marine species live in and around the coral reefs. Below, I inserted an image of a coral reef that is dated back 400 years. When looking more specifically at corals, we know that there are over 6,000 different species. If we want to split this up, we can look at two main subclasses. The first subclass is known as Hexacorallia, or stony coral. The stony corals are the ones that create a hard, durable exoskeleton. This exoskeleton protects their soft sac-like bodies. They are able to create this exoskeleton because they extract calcium carbonate from the seawater. The second subclass is known as Octocorallia, or soft coral. These are not involved in reef building. These types of corals are flexible organisms, often resembling plants and trees. As you can see in the picture, this is resembling a plant or a tree. This is an example of a finger sponge, and it would be known as a soft coral. These types of sponges live on subtidal rocky reefs. Each individual coral is known as a polyp. A polyp is very common, and it is found that between 1 and 8 million are associated with coral reefs. These polyps live on the calcium carbonate exoskeletons of their ancestors, and they add their own exoskeleton to the existing coral structure. These polyps also have a limited degree of organs due to them being a part of the phylum Cnidaria. Additionally, these polyps eat through their tentacles. The way in which they do this is their tentacles extend from their body and wave in the water to create a current, which is how they are able to catch and eat the food particles. As you can see in the image, all of the body parts of the polyp are labeled. Coral reefs rely on marine life as a food source. Some species catch small marine life like fish and plankton. Two examples of plankton are zooplankton and bacterioplankton. In the image, you can see many zooplankton. They are able to catch these species by using the stinging tentacles on the outer edges of their bodies. However, most corals cannot do this, and they depend on the algae called zooxanthellae. This algae provides energy via photosynthesis. These algae live inside the coral polyp's body, where they perform photosynthesis to produce energy for themselves and the polyps. Coral reproduce through one of two ways, the first way being sexual reproduction. About 3/4 of all stony coral species are broadcast spawners. What this means is that the coral species in an area release their eggs and sperm at about the same time. Because colonies may be separated by wide distances, the release of sperm and eggs must be precisely timed. The remaining coral species are brooders. Brooders disperse their larvae shorter distances. These colonies only ever reach small size. The second way in which coral reproduce is through asexual reproduction. Now, within this category, there's budding and fragmentation. Budding is when new polyps bud off from parent polyps to expand or begin new colonies. On the other hand, fragmentation allows a portion of an entire colony to establish a new colony. If a portion of a larger colony is broken off from the main colony during a storm or boat grounding. Coral reefs themselves aren't actually classified into a class. However, the organisms that make them up are. These organisms are in the class Anthozoa. Within this class, there's things like corals, sea pens, and sea fans. And also, there are 10 orders and thousands of species within this. Some characteristics about this class is that the adults are attached to the seabed, and their larvae is free-floating and can drift to new settlements. Additionally, they can secrete a non-living substance around the outside of the body to support and protect their soft body tissues. Furthermore, the organisms in coral reefs are in the phylum Cnidaria. Phylum Cnidaria also is referred to as stinging needles. This is because the organisms possess stinging cells within their tissues. And the other characteristics is that they are aquatic and have radial symmetrical bodies, which allow them to be equally receptive and responsive to prey and predators. Coral reefs are found all over the world's oceans. They cover 360,000 square miles of the ocean floor. These oceans can range from islands off the coast of Alaska to warm tropic waters of the Caribbean Sea. However, the Indian and Pacific are known for boasting the most coral species. When studied, it was found that some coral reefs like shallow waters while others like deep waters. The more studied corals, like tropical corals, are the ones in the shallow water, along with the reef building corals. The reef building corals prefer the clear and shallow water because that is where a lot of sunlight filters through. On the other hand, an interesting fact about the corals that live in the deep sea is that they are found in all oceans, including the subantarctic. Finally, the picture that I've included shows all of the coral reefs in the world's oceans. The red shows the warm oceans, and the blue shows the cold oceans. Coral reefs have three main roles in the ocean, the first of which is water filtration. They're able to do this because the majority of the individual corals and sponges are filter feeders. They consume particle matter that is suspended in the ocean water. This helps in maintaining the water quality near the shores and in turn facilitates the survival of marine flora and fauna. Coral reefs are also shelter for many organisms and are a food source because a lot of the organisms that live there or near them feed on them. The picture I've included is just a picture of a coral that I found pretty. Coral reefs are important for a variety of reasons. Although they are serving marine life, they also help humans. They maintain water quality, and about 1 million people are dependent on the food and livelihood from the fisheries. If these reefs are properly managed, they can annually yield more than 15 tons of fish and other seafood per square kilometer of the reef's area. They are also a great tourist attraction. They have created $29.8 billion worth of money for people to snorkel and do other activities. In the picture, I've included someone snorkeling. Additionally, the Great Barrier Reef alone generates $1.5 billion yearly. Finally, they are called the medicine chest of the sea because several marine species like sponges, sea squirts, snails, and other organisms that reside in the coral reefs produce chemical compounds that act as an important source of new medical drugs. There are many different types of coral reefs. I have chosen 3 that I find interesting. The first one is called a hydrocoral or a fire coral. These are reef-building hydroids that have a hard calcareous exoskeleton and sting cells that can cause a burning sensation if touched. This is the picture on the bottom left, and the sting cells are very depictable. The second type of coral reef is an octocoral, or soft coral. These include sea fans and sea whips, and they are more of a fleshy plant structure. This is the image in the middle. Finally, I'm choosing to talk about antipathoreans, which are also referred to as black corals because of their color, as you can see at the bottom right. These are another type of branching soft coral. There are many different types of prokaryotes in coral reefs. One specifically is known as cyanobacteria. Coral reefs are home to many cyanobacteria and have been for many years. There are many different cyanobacteria and many different roles that the cyanobacteria can play in different reefs. Coral reefs are a nutrient-poor environment, and the cyanobacteria bring photosynthesis, respiration, and nitrogen fixation components to the table. In return, they are given shelter provided by the coral reefs. One main group of eukaryotes in coral reefs are mollusks. Within this group, there are 3 different phylums. The first phylum is gastropods. Gastropods may include snails. Snails are able to keep algae in check for the coral reefs. The second phylum is bivalves. This includes clams, mussels, and scallops. Pictured below is an image of a clam. They are important to the ecosystem because they filter out particles, serve as food, and provide shelter. Finally, cephalopods include squid and octopus. A squid is pictured below. A squid is important in an ecosystem because they play a role as a predator and prey. They are a critical piece in maintaining balance in the entire ecosystem. Plants are a component of coral reefs. Some plants include algae, seagrass, and mangroves. The first picture on the left is a picture of algae, the second, seagrass, and the third, mangroves. All of these help to reduce sediment from passing through the coral reefs so easily. Species interactions as related to coral reefs include symbiosis, competition, and predation. Polyps of reef-building corals contain microscopic algae, which exist with the animal in a symbiotic relationship. How this relationship works is the coral polyps are the animals that provide the algae, a plant, a home, and in exchange the algae provides the polyps with food that they generate through photosynthesis. When it comes to competition, this is seen because other organisms compete for shelter within the coral reefs. The coral reefs are constantly going back and forth between coral or seaweed-dominant reefs depending on the conditions. There are also sponge-dominant coral reefs, but these can be harmful because the sponges can actually take over. Finally, when it comes to predation, fish, marine worms, barnacles, crabs, snails, and sea stars all prey on the soft inner tissues of coral polyps. In extreme cases, entire reefs can be devastated if predator populations become too high. There needs to be a balance between predators and prey to help regulate the entire population. A coral reef is a diverse environment that encompasses a wide-ranging food web. The trophic level is plants and animals. Trophic levels in a coral reef describe the feeding position of the plants and animals that make up that ecosystem. The primary producers are able to make their own energy. In coral reefs, this would be the plants. The herbivores are the creatures that eat primary producers that make up the second level. It is important to keep in mind in these types of food webs that as you go up the pyramid, the available energy decreases dramatically. Coral reefs face many issues. To break it down into two big groups, we can look at natural threats and humans. When it comes to natural threats, this may look like diseases, predators, and storms. When it comes to humans, there's things like pollution, sedimentation, unsustainable fishing practices, climate change, and chemicals being poured into the water. What this can do is raise ocean temperatures and cause ocean acidification. Many of these threats can stress local corals, leading to coral bleaching and possible death, while others cause physical damage to these delicate ecosystems. The conservation of coral reefs is hugely important in order to keep them alive. Some things that humans can do are listed. It is important to not give them as a gift. A lot of people like to give them away as jewelry or art because they're so pretty, but it takes them decades to recreate their structure. Also, avoiding sending chemicals into waterways is important because nutrients from excess fertilizer increases algae growth, which then blocks the sunlight to corals. Practicing safe boating is another thing that is simple to do and important. When boating, don't put an anchor in a spot that is not sandy, therefore to avoid hitting the coral reefs. Something most people may not know is to not touch them. If you go diving, do not touch them because the sediment can smother them. And finally, get informed. Learning how your daily choices such as water use, recycling, seafood, vacation spots, fertilizer use, and more impact the health of coral reefs is a great first step. Some interesting facts about coral reefs is that they are in the kingdom Animalia. Secondly, the largest of the coral reef systems is the Great Barrier Reef in Australia. This barrier reef is more than 1,500 miles long, and I have included a picture of it. Finally, the oldest coral reef known is called Chazy Reef. It is off the coast of the Isle La Motte in Lake Champlain, Vermont.